What's up, everybody? We are here. It's June, meaning the 2026 CFL season is right around the corner. So that means another season preview, and we're talking Ottawa Redblacks today. So I had to go get TSN 1200's AJ Jakubek. AJ, how are you? Excited to get the season going here?
It froze on me.
I just had a glorious intro for you.
Uh,
How are you doing? How are things?
good. Yeah, no, excellent. Looking forward to the season. Exciting times for sure.
Sweet. Well, we're going to be talking offense, defense, overall, general themes of the team heading into 2026. I just want to start right at the top because obviously it's been a bit of a rough stretch for the Ottawa Redblacks over the last number of seasons. Um, just one playoff game since 2019, 27, 76, and one record since 2019 in that span. So they went out and got uh, a winner, and they've handed him the full keys. Hey, AJ, Ryan Dinwiddie, general manager, head coach, offensive coordinator. So I just wanted to start there and tell me what have you seen in shifts with Dinwiddie now here, and just overall, I guess just the overall vibe of what the Red Blacks are going to look like now heading to 2026.
Yeah, I think that's clearly the most significant move they made in the offseason, and they made a number of significant changes. Whether it's offense, bringing in a Jake Mayer, giving him, handing him the keys as the starting quarterback with Drew Brown, number two, at least to start the season. I think the linebacking core, to switch out. Three guys, especially like Jovan Santos Knox and a Darius Pickett, and you bring in
Yeah.
CJ Revis, Niles Morgan, and also AJ Allen, like that. That's pretty significant as well. Special teams, some longtime stalwarts and fixtures here, whether it's Lewis Ward, Richie Leone, the retirement of Nigel Romick, who is the last day one Red Black remaining,
Yeah.
Marco Dubois. Like, so there's been a lot of turnover, but I think most significant is the fact that Ryan Dinwiddie is in as head coach, and like he's a winner, as you mentioned. Just the fact that he's won two Grey Cups in the last four seasons, and when you talk to people around the league, like I always look internally and what I see with my own two eyes here, and certainly talk to people here. But I like to talk to people around the league to get
Yeah.
a bit of a sense of just what people see outside this market. And when you talk to people around the league about the Dinwiddie hire, like grand slam in terms of what you could ask for when you're trying to revamp a franchise that started out really well, getting to three Grey Cups in the first five seasons and winning one in 2016. Fantastic start to the franchise, but it has been lean years since then. You mentioned the record since 2019. I mean, 5 out of 6 years you missed the playoffs, and every one of those years, 3 and 4 wins. Like, that's not going to cut it. And the fans here are still in wait and see mode. I think this team needs to win games and win games early to earn the confidence and trust back of this Ottawa fan base that I think could be really good. But they're still probably a little bit scarred for how these last few years have been. But yeah, I mean, Dinwiddie, one of the best coaches in the league. I think easily one of the best, if not the preeminent offensive mastermind in the league. So there's a lot to like there. It's been different. Just even dealing with him from a media perspective, like he's blunt. He says things. So which
You can almost
I think,
appreciate, hey?
well, for sure. Like it makes our jobs easier, I think, in one way, but it's different to hear somebody say after a 15-point preseason win that some guys cut themselves, right? And I think that's refreshing in a way as well. So yeah, no, it's been good. Wish Bob Dice all the best in his next role in Hamilton. I think he's going to do great there. One of the great football guys in this country, and certainly a special teams ace, and looking to see how things go here in Ottawa.
Yeah, I think back to late last season with the Argonauts. I don't want to misquote, but I believe he called some of the Argos players posers. I think that was the choice of words after a game. So that's Ryan Dinwiddie for you. But hey, the resume speaks for itself. Like you mentioned, the two Grey Cups, four consecutive East Finals, and a 51 and 35 record in his time overall with Toronto. So he's looking to bring a little bit of that magic to the nation's capital. And of course, like you mentioned, offensive guru, right? And he's made his quarterback change and he's got his guys. So it'd be remiss to not start anywhere else but there, right? Hey, AJ, that was one of the bigger storylines that I felt like developed throughout training camp and preseason. I'd love to hear sort of the timeline of events. What happened at the quarterback spot? I feel like it was something that developed as camp and preseason was going on.
Yeah, I think like number one, when they brought in Jake Mayer, you knew they were going to have the best backup situation in the league. You could argue Edmonton as well. I know Taylor Powell didn't play much last year, but I think quite highly of him. Um, this is the best 1-2 punch Ottawa's had since Henry Burris and Trevor Harris. And look, Hank's a Hall of Famer, and Trevor might be there one day too. Um, so from that perspective, I'm not saying that this is Burris and Harris, but I do think like Drew Brown and Jake Mayer are probably the third and fourth best quarterbacks that the Redblacks have ever had. And one and two was Burris and Harris. And when they were here together in 2016, the team won the Grey Cup. So I'm not saying that Ottawa's winning the Grey Cup this year, but they needed that,
Yeah.
especially like when you look at like the CFL stats being put out of the starting quarterbacks this week, the other eight quarterbacks, like they all have a win percentage of 547 in this league or above. So it's eight guys that have won a lot of games and won a lot more games than they've lost. Ottawa doesn't have that, but they've got two guys that can win games. And I think with Ryan Dinwiddie, he's proven to be a little bit of a quarterback whisperer, and
Yeah.
look no further than what he did with Nick Arbuckle over the last couple of years, and like Toronto had a real solid starter there last year with Arbuckle, and the problems that the Argos had last year had nothing to do with the performance of their quarterback. So and I should say, I guess Toronto's got a pretty good 1-2 punch as well now that Kelly is back with Arbuckle. So there's
Yeah.
your three teams, and probably like there's your three non-playoff teams. It's probably not a coincidence that your 12 best quarterbacks, your six best playoff teams have probably high-end starters, but bigger question marks when it comes to the backup. Whereas, okay, the three non-playoff teams, the one good thing that they have going for them is the fact that your season isn't sunk if you lose your starting quarterback early. You've got two guys, all three of those teams have two guys that can win games. But back to just the timeline, yeah, I mean, I think when they signed Mayer, they knew they had a high-end backup. They knew they had somebody that can push Drew Brown. I still expected Drew to be the starter,
Yeah.
before camp. Week one, and I think finalized by the mock game, you could tell it maybe it wasn't Drew Brown's best day with the mock game here. And then the next week, you started to see both quarterbacks get reps with the ones. Then, Jake played the game in Montreal with some of the ones, but, six of the ones for sure were not even on that trip to Montreal. And against the number one Montreal defense, they looked really good
They did.
with two touchdowns in the first three drives. So yeah, at that point, Ryan Dinwiddie made his decision and, clearly liked what he saw just, every day. Like one of the things in dealing with Jake, like he's a pro. Like you can tell
Mhm.
this is not his first go around as the starting quarterback, the way he conducts himself, the way he speaks to the media, like he acts like he's a starting quarterback, which is great because you're going to need someone in that role that feels comfortable with everything that comes with the position, not just how you do on each drive, but the quarterback is the de facto captain of the football team,
Yep.
and that comes with extra leadership qualities that you need. So I think he's got all of those qualities. And I think, his 2 years in Calgary would have helped him. Working under Bo Levi Mitchell would have helped him, and Dave Dickinson as well, just would have prepared him for where he's at right now, where, he's a veteran that's been in the league a while and has started in the league a while, and now with a different offense, different group of receivers, and different head coach, and bit of a quarterback whisperer in Ryan Dinwiddie. Hopefully he can have some of the success that, whether you look at an Anthony Calvillo in this league, whether you look at a Sam Darnold in the NFL. There's countless examples of quarterbacks that found their game a little bit later in their careers, just in the right situation. Nick Arbuckle in Toronto is another prime example of that. So, yeah, looking forward to seeing how that goes. But at the same time, you still have Drew Brown. Like, he looked excellent in relief of Jake Maier on the weekend against the Alouettes, which was encouraging. A couple of touchdown passes in very short work. So I do think Ottawa's in a really good spot, knowing that they've got two competent, capable quarterbacks, which, again, they haven't really had here for the better part of a decade.
Yeah, well, hey, quarterback injuries happen, right? And we've seen that happen in the CFL number of times. Mayer was with the Riders last season as a backup, but in the 3 years before that, as a full-time starter in Calgary, 68.7% of his passes completed for nearly 1,100 yards, 55 touchdowns, and 36 interceptions. So, if you think back to those Calgary times, there's been some qualms with how he plays, but I think what he brings over Brown is more experience as a starter, durability, I think accuracy, and I think just overall consistency. You know what I mean? Mayer to me feels a bit more of a lower variance pivot. He's consistently opted to push the ball downfield less than virtually every other QB in the league. So it'll be interesting, especially compared to Brown, who had the second most throws of 20 plus yards last season. I think Brown is more of the dynamic guy, you know what I mean? And with maybe the more arm talent, can get out and do a lot of things. But hey, Dinwiddie said when he named Mayer the starter ahead of that second preseason game that he's throwing the football well and he's moving his body and he's really trained. He's really trained well. So it'll be interesting to see what this offense looks like because it is a lot of it is new. Obviously, you got the new starting tailback. You got a couple of new offensive linemen in there, as well as a new receiver. So let's just talk about the offense as a whole. I guess we can start up front because I think Drew Brown was not helped in the same way that I think Mayer is going to be with the supporting cast in 2026, especially up front. Like I feel like the offensive line play wasn't up to standard last season, and Brown actually, despite the Red Blacks allowing, I believe it was the most sacks last season. Brown was one of the best at mitigating that. So tell me about the offensive line. You got Sean McEwen, who has been talented, has made his mark in the CFL, three-time All CFL selection, tore his ACL last season to start camp with the Rough Riders, but he's back now, right? And then you got Zach Pelahos kicking inside, who has again another guy who struggled with injuries and his pass protection out at right tackle. He's now inside. And then you got your Americans in Dino Boyd and Martez Ivey, who's also come in. So tell me about, I guess, just the offense as a whole that's going to be around Mayer. And then starting with those guys up front, because I feel like he's going to be set up better for success in terms of pass protection.
Yeah, I mean, that's the hope. We'll see how it plays out. Last year, like, no question, the offensive line was an issue, and I think a lot of that had to do with injuries, especially early injuries to
Yeah.
Peter Godber and Zach Pelios, and that put the team in a bit of a hole where they're using, like Jacob Ruby gave everything he had. Like, I think they expected him to be kind of like an eighth offensive lineman, and he
Yeah.
was basically starting every game. So, it put him in a tough spot. It put everybody in a tough spot. And, I think they needed to address that in the offseason. And, bringing in a Sean McEwen coming off that ACL injury, we'll see. He dealt with, some work, some load management throughout camp. But, certainly, excuse me, allergy season. Certainly, when you look at his pedigree and his track record, if he can stay healthy, one of the preeminent centers in the CFL over the course of the last decade, as you mentioned, with those all CFL honors. And you've got Pelias, who hopefully can stay healthy at right guard. That's another move for him. He's been primarily a tackle since coming into the league out of the University of Ottawa, and then Martez Ivy at right tackle. So you are going. I think the addition of AJ Allen, but some other Canadian talent, getting Luigi Villain. Having Alonzo Adai back healthy from an injury where he got lost in game one last year in Saskatchewan for the season. Like, just losing all those key Canadians early
Yeah.
really put them under the gun in terms of what they could use. I mean, it put William Stanback most games on a snap count. Where there would be games where he would leave like at the 3 minute warning, because unless they threw an extra Canadian there in a different position, he wasn't able to get more snaps. So yeah, it was complicated last year in a lot of ways. So having that extra American available to them on the offensive line should help. Hopefully, Pelias can stay healthy. And beyond McEwen, the two guys to watch for on the interior are Sam Carson, second year, second round pick, who played a little bit last year, and Gio Vaccaro, who's the number one pick in the draft. So
Yeah.
I think both had really good camps, both trending in the right direction. It does feel like Ottawa's in a good spot if they lose some guys in
Yeah.
the interior, with a couple of those guys really pushing as the number 6 and 7 guys in the O line. So that's how the O line looks. The receivers, pretty similar to last year, and I do feel like they had one of the best receiver groups last season as well.
Hmm.
You lose Braylon Addison to retirement, and congratulations to him. Well deserved that he's now a coach with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. You knew he was going to be either a coach or in media. We had him on once a week on the radio.
Oh yeah.
After seasons, and he certainly would have had a bright future in media, but he was like a coach on the field. So you lose
Right.
Addison, you get someone with a little bit more speed and explosiveness in Aiden Eberhardt, who also has great hands. Certainly should complement this group with Geno Lewis, who can be a matchup problem, especially one-on-one.
Yeah.
Khalil Pimpleton, who can be a matchup problem with his speed. Justin Hardy, who, he's just old, reliable. 3 straight seasons with 1,000 yards. You know exactly what you're going to get out of him. And then, Keelan White, I really feel like is trending towards being one of the better
He looks
Canadian
good.
receivers
He looks
in
good,
this
man.
league. And the fact that he's moved inside, he's
Yeah.
looks like he's taken a step, at 2 touchdowns in that first preseason game. So like I really like the receiving core. And then you've brought in an all-star running back in Greg Bell, who can not only catch it out of the backfield, but ran for 1,000 yards last year. Now, again, a lot of that's going to depend on the offensive line and opening up holes for him. But yeah, I do think when you look at the depth at quarterback, the moves they've made, adding some pieces, and then of course primarily the addition of Ryan Dinwiddie as the offensive coordinator as well. I do feel like this offense should be better, and we'll see how it plays out starting Saturday.
I'm honestly really excited for what this offense could look like. Now, there's been a lot of moving pieces, so maybe it takes a little, a couple weeks for them to really get going. But I mean, this team led the league in cough ups in 2025 with 46. That's not very good. And Jake Mayer, he limits those. So I'm excited to see that come down. And when you have Mayer, who's somebody not necessarily looking to push the ball a whole bunch downfield and take more of that check down option. I love Greg Bell beside him in that regard. You know what I mean? Expect him to be heavily involved in the pass game as well. Dinwiddie has always called a traditionally higher passing frequency offense, so expect a lot of that. And then with those receivers, yeah, I think you get a little bit of everything, right? Like Eugene Lewis and now Eberhardt add some extra juice into this group where I think they're going to stretch the field. You got Khalil Pimpleton, who, you could do those sort of sweeps. And I mean, he's also a burner you can do some things with. Keelan White, who's becoming he's one of the best short check down options inside guys. Now being moved inside. He was a great outlet on the outside last season. And then yeah, you got Justin Hardy as well, like you mentioned, all reliable. Hey, and he's gonna do his thing over the middle of the field. Just one last thing on the offensive line here before we move over to the defense. Yeah, I'm that's mostly why I'm happy for and excited for this group is because of how much improved um, this unit could look as long as they stay healthy. But like you mentioned, they got these young guys pushing for playing time if the McEwens and Pelahos, who's missed over 50% of his career games, can't stay healthy. Martez Ivy is big. He is going to be a big addition for them. Nearly 2,700 snaps for the Elks over the past 3 seasons. One of the best run blockers from the position. So that'll be fun to watch. And then Dino Boyd, who I think you could agree was the Red Blacks' best offensive lineman last season. He returns at left tackle where he had the seventh best pressure rate allowed among qualified tackles. So overall, it's an offense that has a lot of upside. I feel a lot more than in previous years. So I'm excited to see what they can do. Transferring over to the defense now. Will Fields, looking to build on a solid first season at the controls. Tell me what you've seen from this group. They've made some additions. It's been a really good run defense. Last season, they allowed the second fewest number of rushing yards per game. They also got some penetration in the backfield, finishing second in tackles for loss. So, tell me what you've seen from the defense and how Fields and this group are going to build in year two here.
Yeah, I think it looked good in preseason. It looked good in camp. Like you saw early in, especially the mock game, the defense was winning a lot, in those head-to-head battles with the offense. So like right from the start of camp, you could see that the defense was really flashing. And I think I think it starts with, probably those linebackers and just how they fly to the ball and the energy and attitude that they have,
Yeah,
bringing in Niles Morgan in the middle from Edmonton, with AJ Allen, who's a legit ratio breaker at will, and CJ Revis at Sam. I think the D line, they really like what they have in the interior, which is, unfortunately why a guy like Dylan Wynn got let go at
yeah.
32. So like a guy like Cleon Lang's probably going to take a lesser role this year, at least to start. So
I like a
that's,
jelly. I think he just always looks good whenever I see him play.
yeah, well, 22 years old and kind of won the job there with Mike
Yeah.
Wakefield. But you got a lot of guys that can rotate in.
Mm.
Habakkuk Baldonado is a guy that, I think they're looking to see if he can take a big step from, how he performed late last season where he was fantastic for Saskatchewan. And they've got guys like Canadians like Aiden John and Luigi Villain that I believe can rotate in as well. So they've got a pretty deep group. When you look at the front four, and then the question is always going to be the secondary, and I think there's a lot to like there. Bringing in Demario Houston,
Yeah.
Bennett Williams has been real solid. He's just got to find a way to stay healthy. You've got Adrian Fry, Alonzo Adai coming back from injury is huge, and Shakur Brown winning that field corner spot. Pretty early in camp, quite frankly,
Mm.
where even before the last preseason game, like he was penciled in as the team starter. But they like some of their backups there as well, and they also have Amari Henderson, who is not too far off, I think, from returning. Hopefully, sometime after the bye week could come back. So, yeah, we'll see how it looks. I mean, clearly William Fields has a pretty good connection with Ryan Dinwiddie from the time that they worked together in Toronto, and that was like one of the first things Ryan Dinwiddie decided, staff wise, was the fact that he wanted to work with Fields again.
Right.
And so far so good. But yeah, I guess if there's one thing that looked a little bit out of sorts in preseason, it was just stopping the run a little bit better. But that has been a strength of this team in recent years, and we'll see how it pans out for this group. I feel like special teams is kind of the, like last year under Bob Dice when he arrived in 2016. That was an issue in 2015. Might have, hampered them. Like that was the weakest, but they had a great offense, great defense. I still think the 2015 Red Blacks is the best team we've seen here in Ottawa, even better than the team that won it the next year. But they were lacking in special teams, and they brought in Bob Dice, and it was essentially top of the league for the better part of the decade, consistently each and every year. Didn't work last year with Rick Campbell taking over in that role, but yeah, just a situation where I feel like, with Jeff Reinbold coming in and a lot of new personnel that they targeted, guys like Brian Cole, for example, who was targeted as a special teams ace. I think it needs to be better. It's trending that way. I'm curious to see how it's going to look just in terms of the specialists, because Richie Leone and Lewis Ward have been part of the
Yeah.
furniture here, and they've been, for most of the time, it was down years for both of them last year as well. But for most of their time here, they're amongst the best kickers and punters in the league. So now it's going to be Brett Lawther coming off a down year in Saskatchewan, but with a great pedigree, having won a Grey Cup last year with the Riders, and Noah Getman winning the job as an American punter who punted once last year when Richie Leone's mother passed away suddenly, and he did a good job there, and he was consistent at camp, so that's a positive. So yeah, a lot of changes there, and of course you still have Khalil Pimpleton, who I think we'll see. Is he going to return every kick? Probably not, given
Yeah.
his importance in the offense. But I think he's going to be a big part of special teams as well. So we'll see if that unit, because like I do feel like for Ottawa to win games consistently, they're going to need to play complementary football. They don't have, as we talked about earlier, they don't have that quarterback that at this stage, has the gaudy record like Bo Levi Mitchell when he entered the league, and like Davis Alexander has right now. So to that end, for Ottawa to win football games consistently, they need all three phases to work well, and that's offense, defense, and special teams, and we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the special teams because, like you mentioned, it's basically a complete flip there, right? With especially after the long-standing uh, players that were there. Circling back to the defense, where they also completely flipped that linebacker core, like you mentioned, bringing in AJ Allen on the weak side, CJ Rivas at nickel, and Niles Morgan at Mac, and even a late addition after cuts, Aaron Casey, who was with Ryan Dinwiddie in Toronto, who is someone I think has some higher upside as well. So, those guys are all tasked with bringing in some championship DNA, I guess you could say, to Ottawa, and help them force more turnovers because Ottawa forced the least amount last season. So hopefully those guys can inject some more juice into that into that category. Even someone like a Lucas Cormier, I think very athletic, has just battled injuries. I think can maybe make some hay on that special teams, like you mentioned, and maybe even some defensive snaps. We'll see. Up front, you did a good job laying out all the guys that are going to be in rotation. I feel like you didn't. You might have mentioned Bryce Carter, and maybe I missed it, but I feel like
No, I didn't.
I feel like that's the headliner of the group, right? I mean, he's the pass production, the pass rush production hasn't been there over the past two seasons. But he's one of the best run defenders. He sets the edge better than most guys in the league, I feel. And but only 9 sacks over the past two seasons after posting 12 in 2023 is a bit underwhelming, I guess, to me. But hopefully he can really get back to double digit sacks because that would be a big boost for this group as they went from recording the second most sacks in 2024 to the second fewest in 2025. So that's another area that could potentially be looked at. And then, yeah, the back end, like you mentioned, Alonzo Adai, praying he could stay healthy because he's had a lot of people have talked about how good he can be and how good he is. He just hopefully can stay on the field this season. And then yeah, you mentioned the other guys on the back end. DeMary Houston is uh fantastic, right? They went out and got their number one corner on the weak side, and he's going to be big for them. I feel, he's their guy where they can uh move around a little bit if they want and kind of match up with those number one guys who are going to be on the weak side. So I'm excited for what this defense can bring. And then you mentioned Shakur Brown, who won the job early. That was a nice note to hear because it seems like the back end has been moved around a little bit over the past couple of years. So I'm excited to see what this defense can bring.
Yeah, and you talk about Bryce Carter. Like I think part of the reason like his socks were down is just teams scheming him,
Yeah.
knowing what a problem he is, so making sure that he's not the guy that that beats them, and maybe having a Bolden Auto on the other side now helps in that regard. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. A lot of interesting names there. I mean, I'm not too concerned about a die injury wise because he hasn't been a guy that's been plagued with injuries in his career. It was just kind of a major injury last year that concerns me less than someone that kind of always deals with injuries, and you worry if he's going to stay on the field. So hopefully that was just a fluke thing and he's healthy and ready to go.
Well, awesome, AJ. I believe we touched on most things there. Is there anything else you wanted to say before we get out of here?
Just excited for the season. Excited, hoping that Ottawa can get off to a good start. I mean, I don't think the schedule makers did either Ottawa or Edmonton a favor playing them against one another, just because, like, if there's ever two teams that needed a win on opening week, it's these two teams. With Edmonton having not won a game in June since the last decade, and Ottawa desperate for a good start as well. Five of their first seven at home, and just trying to build momentum. Two franchises that need to build momentum, and earn the trust of the fan base. And so I kind of wish, like one of them was playing Calgary and the other was playing Winnipeg week one, but it does add a little bit of juice to this game because it feels like it's a big one for both teams. So looking forward to what Saturday brings and what the season brings for Ottawa.
We're here. We're ramping up. It's exciting times in CFL land. Well, thanks for watching. If you sticked around this log, appreciate you hanging out. AJ, tell the people where they can find you, and then we'll get out of here.
Yeah, I mean, TSN 1200 do the drive there Monday to Friday 2 to 6 every week, and of course Redblacks football on TSN 1200 as well. I'm on X at TSN 1200 is of course our number, but at the Super AJ is when I was in hospital. That's what the nurses called me, so that's what I went with.
That's great to hear. Well, thanks for watching. Thanks again, AJ, for taking the time to come on. Season is here, so let's have some fun.
Yeah, can't wait. Appreciate it.